expenses. There are 4 key categories and different kinds of expenses and how money flows out of your life. And each of these brings a different level of value into your life. And remember, the art of creating a rich, juicy, wealthy life is by ensuring that we get more value from the money that flows out of our life. Because this is where wealth is created, where money outflows, not when it inflows. And so understanding these is the real place where you can start making a quantum difference in your wealthy life and increasing that significantly. So hi, I'm Ann Wilson, the Wealth Chef, and we're going to dive into these different expenses. So the first expenses that we have, and the ones that you want more of in your life, are what I call these hell yeah, juicy living expenses. These are ones that are absolutely aligned to your wealthy life values. These are the expenses that you have consciously chosen to have in your life. You consciously know that by exchanging that amount of money for that thing, that experience, really juices you, really brings energy and vitality to your life. And this can be anything from that dancing lesson, that creative painting class, that could be contribution. These are things that you know expand you and your well-being. So that's your hell yeah, juicy living category. The next set of expenses are your neutral expenses. So just like in our debts, you also have neutral expenses. And these are the ones that you need to have. Now, a lot of people go, but Anne, all of my expenses fit into that. I just have to have those. Well, in fact, as you know from other videos we've done, there's a big difference between a need and a want. And most people think that a lot of the expenses that they have in their life are in fact needs, but most of them are wants. And when we really get clear on this, that there's very few things that are true needs. These are the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, the things that give us access to opportunity and shelter and security, that allow us to really exist. Those hell yeah ones are the things that allow us to thrive. But these basic neutral needs are the ones that allow us to survive. And they're not actually that number. So a lot of people will say, but Anne, I have to send my kids to that kind of school or that education, or I have to live in such and such a home, or I have to drive such and such a car. Oh, but Anne, you don't understand. We have to have this kind of wardrobe, or I have to have those expenses. Well, in fact, those are all needs. In fact, those are all wants, because you get to choose. You get to find what that wealthy life is. And when we really get that everything is a choice and very few things are a need, then we really take responsibility for that value in our lives and stop just being blown around by society's dictating what our life should look like, what success is for us. And if we have that expense in our life, we own it and go, it's by choice. So what are neutral ones? These will be, yes, your basic housing over your head, but understand what is that you really need versus the thing that you have to have in order to fit in by others. Neutral expenses will also be things like your utilities. This is electricity, water, gas. These are things that enable you to survive and live. These would also be transport needs. Again, just be very careful that it's not going, well, I have to have the Range Rover to fit in. This is about just your transport costs. So what of those are needs versus wants? And, celebrate those neutral expenses. Really give thanks when you pay that bill or you say that going out, that you may go, oh, I've got to pay this on my electricity or my water, but give thanks that you've got that water. And what does having that water enable you to do? Have that bath, fill up your kettle, make that cup of coffee. And how many people don't have that? Because when we can appreciate these neutral expenses, they might not be hell yeah, but actually when we really think about what they enable us to do, they can quickly from neutral become real hell yeah, juicy living kind of expenses. Then there's a whole nother category of expenses, which are contracting expenses. These are expenses that you might have in your life because you think you need to. that you need to have those things in order to fit in order to be successful, or just because that's what you do if you're in this certain category. Often it is said that let's say the middle class or the aspiring middle class is one of the worst places to be in terms of really living a rich, wealthy, juicy life, because it's so easy in that place to feel that we have to fit in with the proverbial Joneses or the Buthelezis or the Naidus or whatever your culture is, because that need to belong and fit in is one of our highest needs. And this can drive us to taking on expenses that actually don't juice us. Maybe you've got that cable TV or that subscription to a TV channel that actually you don't really use or watch, but just because of your class people or because your other friends have it, you feel you've got to have it. Those could be expensive of the certain car you feel you have to have, or maybe that gym membership, or that other subscription, or maybe these are expenses of certain kinds of entertainment that just because your friends feel this is cool where you want to go. So these are expenses that actually rob you because they're not really juicing you. They're not filling you up. Maybe it's that kid's birthday party. You feel you've got to have that kind of level of expenses just to fit in with the other mums. Now, it might sound like I'm being what would the word judgmental here? But no, it's purely where we are entering into something unconsciously or because it's done in order to be enough, in order to be good enough. That's a contracting expense. And when we can identify these and get the self-worth and the confidence to go, you know what? That's not my expense to have. That was my parents, or that's my society, or that's my church. That's other people's judgments. Actually, when I get that this is not my truth, this doesn't juice me up, we can let go of those expenses and free up so much more of your money to be directing at the things that actually do juice you. Maybe it's that travel you want to do, taking time off to spend more time with those you love, because you're now not having to work so hard to pay for all these other things that aren't yours in the first place. This is so vital. So how do you know whether stuff's contracting? Well, firstly, just looking at them, sometimes when we're really honest with ourselves, we can determine, is it really mine? But anything that you're going, I should have this. If you're shooting all over your expenses, a good indication that it's not yours. You can let that one go. But also, do you have that expense out of either a fear or a greed? Now, I know this can be a real tough one because none of us like to think that we are making decisions in life from fear or greed. There's a lot of judgment to it, but ultimately, this is so much of our money stuff is driven by these two aspects of fear that we're not going to fit in, fear that we're not going to have enough, fear that we're not going to be loved, fear of our future. And so that could end up like a category of a lot of insurances are sold to us through fear, things that we don't need at all, but because of our ignorance or not understanding how to make those buying decisions, we end up in those. The other ones of greed, very, very charged word, but we all can get caught into it, feeling that we've got to have more in order to be enough. That, if I have the holiday home and the yacht and the aeroplane and the fancier car, then again, I'll be worthy of being loved. Maybe I can be in a relationship. Now, there's nothing wrong with those great things. It all is the energy we entered into them. So if you're up for the challenge, go and look at those expenses and notice what comes up. If I say get rid of those expenses, you go, oh, but Anne, I won't be enough. Then you can know it's either fear or greed driving to you having that in your life. And so see what it looks like to get rid of that, because if it's not, hell yeah, and you don't want it in your life. And then the last category of expenses are these completely unconscious rats in the pantry. We've covered this elsewhere, and we've talk about those leaky back ends. This is just the unconscious expenditure that flows out because we haven't been paying attention. These can be the direct debits that we forgot we had. These are the bank fees, which we don't even look at, that creep up and sneak away and eat at our wealth. These are the cash withdrawals that we have no idea where that money went. These can be online subscriptions that we're no longer using, but they trickle away and go off. It's that unconscious rats in the pantry, leaky back ends that you want to be plugging, which claim back your money and which you can now direct to the things you really want and make diddly squat difference to your quality of life. In fact, significantly improve it. And this is where it's so important that you understand the distinction between a wealthy life is not about being mean and not, you can't have that latte or that cappuccino, and about what you can't have, which so much of financial education or financial planners and stuff tell you about is about how you got to cut back and budget on what you can't have, versus real wealthy living is just creating consciousness and getting really intimate with your money and knowing that I choose to direct my money to the stuff that really serves me. So get diving into your expenses. If you're not yet doing your monthly income statements, do that, see what's flowing out of your life, spend some time really putting your expenses into these 4 different categories. And the fewer of you have of those contracting and unconscious, and the more you have of those hell yeah, juicy living and neutral living, the wealthier your life's going to be. So go and explore your expenses, and in the comments below, share with us what you've discovered. Did you discover some rats in your pantry? Did you discover some contracting expenses that you can just eliminate now and free up money to direct elsewhere? Share with us what you've discovered in your treasure hunt, in your expense drawer. So if you're watching this anywhere other than at thewealthchef.com, head on over there, leave your comments below the video, because that's where the great conversation's happening. And know that by you sharing some of your discoveries of some of those contracting expenses or rats in the pantry, and sharing that with us, you might be helping somebody else find that too. Because so often, by us sharing, actually helps somebody else in the world. And that's why it's so important that we have these money conversations out in the open. And while you're here, subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on any of the great content, and go and explore, go and create this rich, wealthy life, and give your money great leadership by really being really conscious about what you allow to flow out of your life and what you exchange your money for.